Thank you, Ting, for your talk. As Ting mentioned, we have two new people here, so I thought I'd say something about chanting, because it occurred to me that it might have seemed very odd. You come to do Zen meditation, and you're immediately hit with a half hour of chanting. And what is this about? And why are we doing this? And this is not what I expected. When I first came to Cambridge Zen Center, the same thing happened. I had no introduction like you. I just walked in. There was no, I didn't come for like an introductory thing like you did. I just walked in, and I was hit with all this chanting. And I had a big problem because I love chanting. And so it just sucked me in. You know, somebody went and hit the bell, and they did an evening bell chant, which is really beautiful. And so I was just, oh, this is so wonderful. But that was a problem because it meant I never had to face, you know, any, what's going on here thinking. But if you're wondering what's going on here, it suddenly occurred to me that when you go these days, especially, when you go someplace to do meditation, it's kind of about you. A lot of the meditation that goes on, it's about becoming calmer. It's about being happier. It's about, you know, it's about you, is what we're sort of taught to think about meditation. And the thing about chanting is it's not about you. These chants go back a long ways. And they come from a really, really long lineage. I mean, they're not exactly the same even as they were 100 years ago, but the fact is they're inherited, you know, and they're inherited, for many of us, are inherited from a culture different from the one we grew up in, you know, which is kind of cool, you know, kind of expanding our minds. And so they're coming from, you know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people have been involved in what come to us as these chants, you know, over the thousands of years. You know, Buddhism has been around for over 2,500 years, and Zen has been around for over 1,500 years, you know, Chan in China. And so this is, this comes to us from many, 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 many people who lived in different times and different places, and you know, all kinds of things were happening around them. I'm giving a talk on the Tang, end of the Tang dynasty in a week for the Dharma teacher weekend. And if you think the world is bad now, you should have been around at the end of the Tang. It was just horrible. So yeah, so we are, when we're chanting, we're really hit with, this is not about me. This is not focused on me. It's just part of a much bigger thing. And I'm just stepping into that ocean. You know, we have this line in one of the chants, the great vow ocean. I'm just stepping into that great vow ocean, whether I make a vow or not. I'm just stepping into this big ocean around us. So chanting is just wonderful because it's not about this. So I just wanted to say something. There's a lot more you could say about chanting, but I'll stop there. And ask if there are any questions. And of course, one question could be, can you say more about chanting? But you might have other questions to ask. So are there any questions? Yes, okay. Pass the microphone to Jane.
Yeah, during Ting's talk, she mentioned the monk had said, the important thing is not to check yourself. Could you explain what checking is?
Yeah, right, because that's a weird kind of locution. Yeah, so our teacher is Zen Master Sung-san, the one who founded our school. He was from Korea, and his English was absolutely terrible, which was great because it made his teaching very concentrated. When you read translations of his teaching from Korean, they're not as good because his Korean, of course, was very eloquent, but his English was terrible, and so that made him really hone things down. And he hooked onto this word checking. And yeah, it's not like a typical English, so thank you for asking. It's not a typical English locution, the way he used it. So checking is that mind that says, I like this, I don't like this, I did this good, I did this bad, I'm a good person, I'm a bad person, this is a good person, this is a bad person, I like this food, I don't like this food. That's checking, the judgmental mind that we use so often. So that's what checking is. So thank you very much. And yeah, checking just separates us from what's going on. We're so busy trying to decide whether this is good or bad, whether we like it or we don't like it, that we can't see what it actually is. So yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions?
I have
Yeah.
a question related to
Oh,
checking.
let's do Liz and then Shuang. Okay.
Um, and so what's the difference though between checking and just noticing? Because if I notice that, oh, my mind is wandering, I've made a judgment that my mind is wandering. I mean, you know what I mean? I have to
No, you
have to.
made an observation.
Well, I guess I don't know the difference between
What color is this mask?
black.
There you go. That's an observation. That's not a judgment. Okay?
Okay.
It's a pretty mask. It's an ugly mask. Those are judgments. I mean, checking. Yeah, judgments, checking. Yeah. Right? But it's a black mask. This is black, right? Everybody can see it's black, right? Ting's is blue. Okay? So that's observation. Okay? Thanks. Shuang.
Two questions, please. Two questions. The first one is Ting, during her talk, she mentioned a short meditation retreat versus long retreat. Can you maybe advise when someone knows they are ready for a longer retreat, like 1 week, 2 week, up to 4 week,
Okay. Or 3 months.
3 months?
Yeah, you can do 3 months in our school. Yeah, I've sat a lot with this one wonderful Japanese Rinzai teacher, Shoto Harada, and he would say things like, "You can't sit a retreat longer than 10 days," and I'm like, "Oh, really?" You know? But yeah, so I can't answer things like, "When are you ready?" There's no checklist. There's no checklist. Some people, like a duck to water, they can do a long retreat very early on. And some people really struggle with it. So the question is, you have to look at your own meditation practice. And you have to see how solid it is. Is it regular? Do you do it every day? Do you do it for a reasonably long time? If your meditation practice is 10 minutes a day, which is something I often recommend to people, because often that's the only thing they can manage. That's better, that's fine, 10 minutes a day. But if it's 10 minutes a day, you're probably not ready. If you can sit a half hour a day regularly, then yeah, you're probably ready for a meditation retreat of some sort. And if you can't fit it into your life, but you come to practice here, whether it's online or in the room, and you can sit through practice and you do that, a few times a week, yeah, you're probably ready to do some kind of meditation retreat. So we offer 3 lengths here. One is a short 1-day retreat from 9 to 4. You bring your own lunch. We're having one on November 12th, my birthday. My husband was leading that. So that's a good first retreat. It's a good length for a first retreat. And then we're going to be having a 2-day retreat in December. And that's a Friday night to Sunday around noon. And these will all be hybrid. So that's a 2-day retreat. And my general recommendation is if you've sat a 1-day retreat and had no problem, then go try a 2-day retreat. And then I'm hoping, I have to poll people and see if we have enough interest to do a 5-day retreat in January. We used to do 5-day retreats every January and every July, and then COVID hit and everything went out the window. But we're trying to restore things. And so I'm hoping we can have a 5-day retreat in January. And then you have to just look, when you're sitting, are you sitting there going, oh my God, I wish this was over? Or are you sitting there going, oh, this horrible thing happened to me and I can't forget about it? Or I don't know what I'm going to do about this thing in my life and this person, if your mind is going like that, you're not ready for a long retreat. But if you something comes up and then you bring back your practice, something comes up, you bring it back to your practice. If you can sit there, for a long time till that chickpea is hit. And then, and you're not roiling, you're not like a volcano, then yeah, you're ready for a retreat. And how long it is, well, that's up to you. There's also body issues. You might have noticed I have a bad knee, and certain things are harder for me now. So there are body issues too that people have to deal with. But we do have chairs and stuff like that. But yeah, you are the one who knows what you're capable of. No one else knows that. Yeah, I started sitting like, I did a 2-week cellar retreat when I've been practicing for about 4 years. I just did it. So, And then some people, they just can't sit through a retreat. They've sincerely practiced for many, many years. But for one reason or another, they just can't get through a retreat. That's okay. Yeah. But they're great. They're really great. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
Sorry, I have a second question.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the second question is, are all attachments bad? We have regular attachment. I call them, those are the ones we recognize they're bad. How about, for example, attachment to the Zen center, to practice, to family? Can you say something about those other kinds of attachment?
Yeah, so we overuse the word attachments. My first instinct whenever anyone asks me about attachments is to talk about my vacuum cleaner where we've lost all the attachments. So that's a real problem, all the little things you stick on so you can get in the corners and, you can do drapes. And so we've lost all that. So it's a big problem. Not having attachments is a big problem, okay? But yeah, so in English, we use this word attachments for a large range of things. So we have responsibilities to our family. We have obligations to our family. We have responsibilities. If we decide that we are going to practice very sincerely and very regularly at this Zen center, then that means we have responsibilities to the Zen center to make sure it keeps going. Like maybe showing up, that's a simple responsibility. So we tend to confuse responsibilities and obligations with attachments. So attachments are sticky. So attachments are things that they're like glue, and when it's time to turn your attention to something else, you can't. So that's what we mean when we talk about attachments and non-attachment. So non-attachment doesn't mean you don't love your husband and your kids. It means you can completely love your husband and your kids, because there's nothing pulling you away. When you're with your husband, you can completely be with your husband. When you're with your kids, you can completely be with your kids. When you're with your husband and your kids, you can completely be with your husband and your kids. That's what non-attachment means. But it also means that when you're at work, you don't have to worry about your husband and kids. You don't think, I wonder if my husband still likes me. I wonder if my kids are doing well in school. You can just completely, whatever you are, you're completely there. And then when you're doing something else, you're completely doing that something else. That's what, so non-attachment means true attachment. It means 100%, whatever your job is, whatever your situation is, 100%. Okay? Yeah, so love your husband and your kids completely.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments or whatever? Yeah, okay.
I enjoyed the chanting. It's the first time I've chanted. But I'm wondering, is there something purposeful about it? Obviously there is. That's not
Yeah,
really the
okay,
question.
so, okay, you want me to talk more about chanting?
About what one hopes the purpose or the...
Okay, so in Zen, we don't talk about purpose. I mean, Zen means wake up and help this world, but it's not that your purpose is to help this world, it's that this world is there needing help and you're there and you can help it. Okay, there's a difference, right? Purpose is something way in the distance, and Zen is right now, yeah. So what you're really asking is, how does chanting work? What is actually happening when we're chanting? I think that's really what you're asking.
What is the intended
microphone.
I'm asking is, what is the intended effect? I know
So
the
there's no
effect it had on
intended-
me.
There's no intended effect. There's never any intended effect. It's just what is happening right now. But I will tell you what the sort of stance towards chanting. Chanting is listening. Even if you're chanting by yourself on a long solo retreat, chanting is listening. And, you know, it's really interesting, like when we were all on Zoom, now it's always people in the room who lead chanting. And people on Zoom will time sitting, except on weekends for technical reasons. But when we were all on Zoom, and so you could only hear one voice besides your voice. And if you were too loud, you couldn't hear whoever was chanting. And then all of a sudden you'd realize, like, I'm in a different key. I don't know if they went up and I went down, or I went down and they, you know, you don't know what happened, but you suddenly realize you're in a different key or in a different tempo or something. And so we learned, at least I learned, to really listen really hard, to really pay attention to the one voice that I could hear besides my own and my husband's. So chanting is listening. And you listen, and it's not like your voice blends and it's beautiful. I mean, sometimes you get people who can't carry a tune, and sometimes they're practice leaders, you know, and that's okay. That's okay. I think of it as harmony, really interesting harmony. And I remember once sitting a week of Kyelche up at Providence, and there was this guy who absolutely couldn't carry a tune, and then he missed a practice, and I missed his voice. I missed that. You know, it was adding like a depth and a resonance and a something, you know, and it's fine. You know, this isn't like, you know, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. We're not trying to, you know, Vienna Voice Choir. We're not trying to sound beautiful. We're just trying to 100% chant with each other, create this thing together. So chanting is about listening. And the other wonderful thing about chant, well, there are many wonderful things about it, but another wonderful thing about it is that it's a check on our minds. So if we're really, really spacing out, we'll know it because we'll lose our place in the chants. And every now and then it happens to everybody at once in the room here. And for the people online, it must be hilarious because all of a sudden, you know, like we all stop and you can tell that you can't really see it that well with a camera, I imagine, but you can tell that we're all looking at each other. Okay, and then somebody will kind of start it over again, you know? So chanting gives you like this feedback, this wonderful feedback, because, you know, you sit in meditation, you think, oh, I am in samadhi, I'm in nirvana, I am so wonderful, so enlightened, you know, what you are is spaced out, right? But, you know, so this kind of thing, you know, that you can think, but you're chanting, you know, you have to pay attention, you have to pay attention, you have to pay attention. Yeah. So yeah, chanting is a really great practice, whether you do it, you know, by yourself, and even then it's listening, which is interesting, whether you do it by yourself or whether you do it, you know, with other people. And one time I did one 90-day retreat, solo retreat. I could never fit the group retreat into my schedule. But I did do a 90-day solo retreat when I turned 65. I figured if I don't do it now, my body will fail, I'll never do it. And midnight practice is a very important part of solo retreats. Like 11 to 1 or 12 to 2 or something. I would do mine 11 to 1. But I was 65 and I couldn't do it anymore. You know, if I would sit there at midnight, you know, and just start, I couldn't help it. My eyes would close and I'd fall asleep. So I would chant. That's what I did. I would just chant. I'd chant and I'd walk. Because if I chant and I'd sit, I'd fall asleep while chanting. But I would chant and I'd walk. You know, and that kept me going. But I cut it down to 45 minutes because I was an old lady. Now I'm even older. But yeah, so chanting is a really wonderful practice. Also, sometimes when people are really emotionally upset, or maybe they have some kind of something like schizophrenia or bipolar or something, and their thoughts are just, they can't, then chanting is a wonderful practice. We have a monk in our school who is schizophrenic or was schizophrenic, because when you get old, it sometimes goes away. And he told me, he said, chanting and bowing, chanting and prostrations, he said, those are the practices. Because I had a student who had just been hit by, a math student who had just been hit by schizophrenia. And I said to this guy, what can I do? He wants to go to graduate school. He said, no, tell him to be a ditch digger. He cannot sit in a room thinking. He cannot do that. That'll just send him downhill. So it was very interesting. So yeah, chanting, bowing, I haven't talked about prostrations. They're an amazing practice you can do. Ting is the bowing master here. She does like 500 a day, every day. My knees only allow me to do like 3 sets a day. And I almost never do that, but yeah, bowing is, again, bowing is this practice, these prostrations that we do. We do 108 every early morning practice, 6:30. And if you can do them at home, do it. They're great. Because bowing, it goes directly into our ape mind. So, we're apes, and this is the posture of total surrender. And so you do that 108 times, and it just works on your nervous system. It just works on your nervous system, and it just rewires you somehow. It's really fabulous, but you have to do it regularly for a long time, and your center becomes strong and your heart becomes open. You go down, you go up, you go down, and you go up. It's not just you're surrendering, but then you come up again, and you surrender and you come up again. It's this magic. It's really fantastic, but you have to have good knees and a good back to do it. Yeah. Also, if you have toddlers, nobody here is of an age to have toddlers. Well, you do. Well, except they're not toddlers anymore. But if you have toddlers, they can see you're busy. Because, when you're sitting in meditation, what your kid sees is a lap. Yeah. You have toddlers? No, okay. But when you're doing prostrations, they say, oh, mommy's busy, daddy's busy. And they don't bother you. So, yeah. Yeah, when my kid was a toddler, that was my personal practice, was prostrations, because I couldn't even dream of sitting. Even when he was an infant, if I sat in another room, he'd be asleep, and my husband and I would start sitting, he'd start crying. He'd wake up, oh, they're meditating, I have to wake up and bother them. Yeah, so, yeah, we have all these practices, they're really wonderful. And then we have Kongan practice, and that's where we ask you these questions, like, does a dog have Buddha nature? And whatever you say, almost always we say, no, that's not right. And then that really forces your mind out of its, out of its standard kind of ways of functioning. And some people here have done a lot of Kunlun practice, and some people have done a little, and some people have done none. But those who have done it can tell you, oh, it's really interesting. Because it just forces your mind, like, get out of that rut, So, yeah. So, thank you. Thank you for your question. And it is now time to stop.